Greetings and happy Wednesday. Happy Hump Day Wednesday. Give yourselves a round of applause for making it to and through another day because, as we know, each day is a blessing. So, again, give yourselves a big round of applause. And the story here is going to be a small mini series, and it's entitled Love Triangle. Ends tragically, and it involves Pastor Brodus Perry. Again, thank you to everyone that has been supporting this channel. And for those of you that are new, welcome, welcome, welcome. I appreciate the engagement and all of the support on and offline. Again, much love to each and every one of you. So, without further delay, let us get into the story. This love triangle that went horribly wrong for Pastor Brodus Perry.
Latoshia Daniels, Daniels.
Before we get into all of the allegations here, have you ever testified in a situation like this before?
No.
Is this a comfortable?
Okay, that was Latoshia Daniels. Latoshia Daniels is the woman who has been charged in the loss of life of Pastor Brodus Perry. Now, a little bit of backstory. This incident actually occurred in 2019. The trial and verdict was just read this November 2025. So I'm going to give you a little bit of audio. Let me place up the fair use disclaimer. And also viewer discretion disclaimer, because some of the things you are going to hear for many people is going to be very disturbing and perhaps upsetting. So, trigger warning. Right now, you're going to listen to a clip that occurred in 2019, and this is courtesy of ABC 24. Let's roll the clip.
Reports, scanner traffic, and friends of Pastor Brodus Perry show a scorned mistress from Little Rock drove to Collierville over the man she loved. Local 24 News reporter Rebecca Butcher live with tonight's top story. Rebecca, you're reporting there from Collierville.
Yeah, Katina, well, that suspect, Latoshia Daniels, she's expected here in Collierville Town Court tomorrow morning. We got a chance to speak today to a friend of the now deceased Pastor Perry. She went to Florida A&M University with him several years ago. She told me that the news today was hard to believe. That's a Collierville cop after arriving.
Now, keep in mind, this happened in Tennessee. And this was a Memphis pastor. This is Latoshia Daniels. And allegedly, she basically, as she committed her deed, stated, "You broke my heart," as she proceeded with taking his life, injuring the pastor's wife, Yes, injuring the pastor's wife. As you could hear the reporter stating, she drove 2 hours to carry forward this deed. But this story is very twisted and it has a lot of things to unpack, which is why I said it's going to be a mini series. Before I get into this, I just want to say that we have heard so many stories of these pastors and these prophets, and I will say and continue to stand on these are humans. They sin, even though they are held to a higher standard. Sometimes when you peel back the layers of some of these individuals, and we can take it even further to the Catholic Church, which I'm not going to do, at least not on this broadcast, some of the horrors, some of the nefarious and diabolical acts are committed by those with whom we trust, with whom we confide in. And I want you to earmark the word confide because we will be going back to that word confide and you'll understand exactly what I mean. So let us continue with this audio again, courtesy of ABC 24 Memphis. Again, this is the case of Latoshia Daniels and her case, her unaliving case of Pastor Brodus Perry.
Thursday night at the Meridian Park Apartments. Executive Pastor Brodus Perry was dying from 3 gunshot wounds. His wife was shot in the shoulder, and Latoshia Daniels was holding a gun. We contacted one of Pastor Perry's friends in Florida.
I was, really sad, and I was like, not Brodus. I was like, he just moved. Like, didn't he just move to a new city? And
the couple did just move to Collierville from Little Rock. That's where Perry's wife now tells police she and her husband knew Daniels from and never suspected an affair until Thursday night. She says as Daniels showed up, had a short visit, began to leave, she grabbed her gun and started firing, shouting, "You broke my heart."
it appeared that they were from.
So this is how the sordid story of Latoshia Daniels and Pastor Brodus Perry begins. Again, this incident occurred in 2019, and some of the testimony that you'll hear is very disturbing and heartbreaking. The victims, of course, one is no longer here, the wife, and some people may poo poo on my opinion, which is okay. And part of me feels that Latoshia Daniels was a victim as well. And the reason why I say this is because I do believe that she was broken. She was manipulated. She had already suffered heartache and heartbreak in previous relationships. She went to this pastor who, according to her testimony, manipulated her, used her, and she, for no other terms that fit right now, lost it. And unfortunately, as a result, he lost his life. She's lost her life too, in a sense, in a very real sense. So, ladies, younger ladies, older ladies, if you don't learn anything else from this broadcast, please learn. And I'm speaking from experience because I've been through a lot. To love yourself. If you don't love yourself, if you don't love yourself, how do you expect someone else to love you the right way? Now, someone can provide, someone can shower you with everything, and you'll hear her say this, that she never felt or received before, but look what it cost. And for you men and some women of the Bible, you know what the word says about adultery and cohabitation. From my experience and from my own observations, most every time, this never ends up well. If it doesn't implode on this side, on the other side, it most definitely will. So let's continue. But before we do, let's go into how she must have been feeling. Before moving to Tennessee, Brodus Perry is a pastor at a Little Rock church, also referred to as the St. Martin Baptist Church in Little Rock, Arkansas, where he specialized in assimilation and small groups. Now, Latoshia Daniels, and again, earmark this, and pay very close attention. Latoshia Daniels was a licensed clinical social worker. A clinical social worker. Keep in mind, Latoshia Daniels just was on trial for taking the life of Pastor Brodus Perry. Social worker, and now being charged with taking the life of a pastor with whom Latoshia Daniels was a former member.
From what the lady shared, that they had a relationship, and so I would say healing has to take place for the young lady who committed the crime, and also for the wife.
Records show Daniels, a certified anger management specialist, was a member of Pastor Perry's former church in Little Rock.
And that's another thing to take note of. A certified anger management specialist. So, was she enraged? Was this a crime of passion? Is there any gray area to this? A lot of things to unpack. So, former church, again, in Arkansas, until they moved to Tennessee, drove 2 hours to Perry's home in Collierville, Tennessee, confronted him and his wife, Tabitha. As Daniels was leaving, she pulled her weapon and pew-pewed Brodus several times, reportedly saying, "You broke my heart." She also pew-pewed his wife, who survived, thank God, to this horrific tragedy. Briefly, the affair and trial. Latoshia Daniels testified that Brodus Perry, had manipulated her into an affair which occurred between February 2017 and early 2019. So again, this dates back 6 years. Perry's wife and this is where it gets a little tricky, denies knowing about the affair or what is being deemed and labeled as an ethical non monogamy arrangement that the defense claimed Perry practiced. So that's going to be very interesting. So let's listen to a little bit more of the very part of this backstory. Fair use.
The two also work together at a nonprofit.
And this was such a dramatic situation. And for her to find out this information of whatever this lady is saying while her husband is being killed, I could imagine how that, may feel.
And Daniels is expected here in court tomorrow. That's at 8 o'clock. She's being held without bond right now on murder charges. We're live tonight in Collierville. I'm Rebecca Butcher, Local 24 News.
Rebecca, we are learning new information.
Okay, again, that was in 2019. So I always like to read some of the comments. And again, this is courtesy of ABC 24 Memphis. And here are a few. Latoshia Daniels, actually, she was called the Emmer, and I'm sure you understand what the Emmer is, was an anger management specialist. You can't make this stuff up. And Miss O'Fay says, did I hear that correctly? She was an anger management specialist? Another, not anger management, shaking my head. Another, the wages of sin is death. Next, Teresa says, she still doesn't have a man and now going to prison. Being single is better than debasing yourself and trying to live another woman's life. Hope his wife finds a real one. I understand that, and most of me echoes that sentiment because the more and more that I research this story, he was not clean. Again, the creator, in my opinion, renders final judgment. But again, there are certain positions I believe in which you hold that you are most definitely held to a higher standard. And Athor said, but what's done in the dark, absolutely. And the last comment I'm going to read right now in this part of the little mini series. These fake pastors should stop playing with an individual's emotions. So, well, he's not here to defend himself. Those of you that are listening and joining, again, welcome, welcome one, welcome all. Because he lost his life, do you think he is responsible at all? Or is the onus entirely upon Latoshia Daniels, who knew, number one, he was married, number two, who had previous relationship problems, number three, went out and purchased the weapons, and number four, carried out a very heinous crime that almost took 2 lives. Your thoughts? So now we're going to go to audio, courtesy of Court TV, again, fair use, where the jury sees pastors' videos talking about ethical non-monogamy. My apologies, but I've never heard of ethical non-monogamy. So here's a pastor speaking about the passing, the slaying, if you will, of Pastor Brodus Perry. This is Dr. J. Lawrence Turner, who was the senior pastor of the Mississippi Boulevard Christian Church. Again, fair use.
Around his murder leave us shocked and shaken. According to the police affidavit, Tabitha let former acquaintance Latoshia Daniels into the apartment. Once Perry arrived home, he and Daniels spoke for several minutes. As she was leaving, she pulled out a handgun and began shooting, hitting Perry 5 times and telling him, quote, "You broke my heart." Police arrived as Daniels was reloading her gun. Police shot Daniels and she was taken to the...
So she, as you heard the reporters state, pow Pastor Perry several times, then reloaded. When the police arrived, they returned on her and she was taken to the hospital. And as we know, she did survive.
The hospital for her injuries, where she attempted to get away from police. She faces charges of first-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, resisting arrest, and assaulting a police officer. She has pleaded not guilty. As far as the motive, reports...
Now keep in mind, certified anger management specialist and a licensed social worker. Recall, I asked you to earmark those 2 facts early on. Again, this is a very twisted, sordid story. Again, this is a photo of the late Pastor Brodus Perry, and this is his wife, Tabitha. Let's continue. Again, fair use, courtesy of Court TV.
Say that Tabitha, the wife, told police she was unaware of an affair between her husband and the suspect, but she believed Daniels' actions suggested it's a possibility.
Now, that was interesting. She said that Daniels, meaning Latoshia Daniels' actions, was a possibility. Was there more? Is Tabitha 100% sure that her husband, the late Brodus Perry, Pastor Brodus Perry, had been 100% honest with her?
Julia Janae reporting there. So while we're waiting for court to start up, we've got surviving victim Tabitha. She's the pastor's wife. Took the stand on Tuesday, and on cross, she was questioned whether her husband wanted to ever bring in another person into their relationship. There were some videos of the pastor that were played for the jury. And in these videos, he's talking about ethical non-monogamy. What is that? Let's watch.
Again, I've never heard of that. If you've heard of that, place a praying hand in the chat. Let's continue. Wow, wow, wow. So your thoughts on, and my apologies for the audio, but that's how the audio is. That's the audio quality of court TV. But he is explaining and stating that there was conversation and he has to be respectful and not put in a situation. So it appears, not saying I cannot attest that his wife Tabitha knew, but there's a strong possibility that she may have, or at least had an idea. Let's continue. Again, fair use.
So this clip is him talking about Latasha not being okay with the ethical non-monogamy and you being perfectly on board with it. Was that true?
No.
Did you believe that Brodus was being open and transparent and honest with you about his relationship with Latasha?
What relationship?
He wasn't being open with you about his relationship with Latasha. That there was a relationship at all. He was not transparent about that.
There was nothing. To my knowledge, there was no relationship.
And you never said because he was so open and honest and transparent with his relationship with Latasha that you were okay with him then adding another partner.
No.
That didn't ever happen.
So his wife Tabitha has denied knowing anything about a relationship. In fact, she has stated that there was no relationship. So what did the audio mean from which you heard the late pastor's voice? Let's continue. So this is another audio of the late Pastor Brodus Perry. Again, courtesy Court TV. So you'll hear later that he was into cigars. So again, no judgment here, but I believe that certain professions, especially men and women of the cloth, there's certain behaviors I believe that one should not entertain. Again, these are just my opinions. So he was concerned if anyone were to see him at the cigar lounge. So my thing off the top of my head is, and this is with anything in life, if you believe in your heart of hearts what you're doing is right and righteous in the eyes of God, why would you be concerned who sees you? See, I believe it's being persecuted there for wondering if he were to be seen behind this cigar lounge and he wanted to be in the back. I'm going to read some of the comments again. This is courtesy of Court TV. Misso 1873 says, the definition of a pastor is not him. Again, this is not to bash. These are all opinions, and unfortunately, some of the opinions you may hear are not favorable. Next, Swanee says, he was messing around and it caught up with him, not to mention giving twinkle toe vibes as well. Now, I am not going to give a commentary on that. That'll be for another topic and video. But you'd have to see this to understand what Swanee meant behind that. Maker says adultery can get you either prison or unalived. Call Me Miss McCoy said, and this is very poignant, he played in God's face. The wages of sin is death. Now, I'm sure many believers, non-believers, we've heard this many times. One LW says, she talking about what relationship after this lady drove miles to your home to end you and your husband? You know, the one where hubby told her he loved her while he was, ma'am, that relationship. Stop being in denial. Again, these are not my words. These are not my comments, but I do question whether or not, respectfully, if Tabitha knew indeed what was going on. And D Beautiful comes up with Proverbs 14 and 12. There is a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. Again, Proverbs 14 and 12. There is a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. And again, these are for believers who understand. And we've had these conversations. There are just certain behaviors you shouldn't, well, it would be encouraged not to do, because God, in my opinion, is not to be mocked. That's something I learned as a child, and it stayed with me. Trust me, things have a way. Ooh, they have a way of coming back. Modern Legacy says, and I must agree because I had to learn that the hard way with someone who was my mentor, but something felt off and behaviors, and I must be honest and transparent. I didn't want to go looking, but my gut would not leave me alone. I knew something wasn't right, and things that I suspected again has come to pass. And sometimes, no matter how nice a person is, and I'm not saying that individual isn't a kind person, but sometimes when you peel back layers, you find out certain things, and you have to remove yourself from those individuals. You just must. Again, I would encourage you, in my opinion. There are too many scammers pretending to be pastors out there now. And Marie says, as my grandpa would say, that boy got sugar in his tank. Again, I don't know about that. Again, I don't have any judgment against any groups or any other belief systems. Again, that is something I'm sure I would believe that he had conversations with the Most High about. That's not for me to judge. Another one says his mannerisms suggest that he enjoyed the company of people who were other than women. So we have quite a few comments that are suggesting a particular lifestyle. And the last one I'll read is, how can a woman be with a man like this, ignore obvious signs that he is not into women? Well, I have to stop that right there because Tasha Daniels is obviously a woman, but when you hear some of the testimony, when you hear some of, and I don't know if I'm going to play some of this or not because it is very disturbing. Some of the acts that were performed on her suggest some vile and just bizarre behavior. Again, what you do behind closed doors is your business, but again, this is a story that, again, will be broken down because it's a lot. And last, nobody was following or applying scripture. Instead, they were following a worldly man's wisdom. Absolutely. So, we are going to go to the very emotional testimony of Latasha Daniels. Again, this is fair use and courtesy of Court TV.
Now, I want to talk to you about your second marriage, okay? That was to Brian.
Yes.
Now, how long were you married to Brian?
Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, this is her second marriage. Okay? Her second marriage.
I was married to Brian for 8 years.
Was that relationship positive?
No.
Did you feel loved in that relationship?
No.
Did you feel wanted in that relationship?
Not at all.
Would you?
So, again, if you were to view the video, you could see that this woman has been broken, no self-esteem whatsoever. I have been there. I've never taken anyone's life, but I've been there. And again, this is so the entire ordeal is just a horrific tragedy. And when you have emotions involved, you just don't know how close to the edge a person may be. And that's why it's very, very important that you pay attention because, again, if you've been around for 50 years or more, there's certain things you've either experienced or you've seen other people experience. So let's continue. Again, this is the testimony of the defendant, Latoshia Daniels, who stood trial on taking the life of Pastor Brodus Perry. Let's continue. And thank you again to those that have tuned in and those who may catch the replay.
Describe Ryan as being emotionally distant,
He very much was so.
emotionally neglectful.
Yes.
Did you try to get Ryan to go into marriage counseling?
Yes, we had a discussion and he didn't want to do it.
Did you determine that you would go get your own counseling?
Yes.
Did you go see a psychologist?
I did not.
Why?
Because of the field that I was in, I just wanted I wanted spiritual guidance, but also
So she did not go seek help from a psychologist, as she mentioned, because of the field she's in. As I mentioned at the top of the broadcast, she is a licensed social worker and a certified anger management recipient. Again, you may say, how is that possible? And she ends up taking a person's life. Again, you have to unfortunately factor in the emotions, the heat of passion. Let's continue listening to testimony of defendant Latoshia Daniels. And we're just a minute or so in.
because of me being in private practice, I was afraid of being that individual that was getting the water cooler talk per se. Um, just in my field, I didn't have anyone that I felt like I could really go to and trust because I was very closed off. I didn't share my business. And so going through that and being in private practice, I didn't want to take what was my income because I needed to be able to take care of the things in my life. So I did not. But I did know that spiritually I wanted some direct.
So you could hear her testimony that because of her private practice, she did not want to have that involved and she sought spiritual guidance. And that came from the late Pastor Brodus Perry. Let's continue again. This is fair use, courtesy of Court TV.
Why did you feel like you needed spiritual direction?
Just from my first marriage, when I went to my dad and told him that I was getting a divorce, the one thing he said to me that just resonated with me was that he said he would have gotten an attorney. I'm taking away my children, but it was all just like I just felt like it was kind of like a punishment from God, and so I just didn't want to be in another failed marriage. I just didn't.
So she is visibly shaken, and those memories from her failed relationships have literally come back to haunt her. And feeling as though she was going to be a failure, deep inside of her own soul and perhaps what others may have thought of her. In my opinion, she seems as though that was overwhelming. Let's continue. Again, courtesy of Court TV. And this is a testimony of Latoshia Daniels.
Did your dad consider it your failure that you got divorced? Yes. Did you seek out spiritual counseling?
I did.
Now I want to talk to you about St. Mark's, okay?
Okay.
Some more.
Yes.
May I first go? Yes. Thank you.
So this is where Pastor Perry comes in.
What is St. Mark's?
It's the church that I attended in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Is it a big church or a small church?
It's a big church.
Did you have any particular role within the church?
Yes. I participated in evangelism, but eventually became a life group leader.
How were you selected to become a life group leader?
One Sunday was talking to just in shaking hands with some of the pastors. Pastor Perry, Brodus Perry, he had asked me, he was like, "You thinking about being a life group member?" And at that time, I was like, "I'll consider it." And then eventually, I did go ahead and sign up to become a life group leader.
And this was prior to reaching out for that spiritual counseling, right?
Correct.
How many members go to St. Mark's?
At the time, approximately 6,000.
That's a lot. So she said approximately 6,000 attended St. Mark's, and that she had met the late Pastor Brodus Perry, who spoke to her briefly about her wanting to be a member of a life group. Let's continue again. Courtesy Court TV. This is testimony from Latoshia Daniels.
How many people were selected to be life group leaders?
In our first set of leadership training, it may have been approximately 60 to 80 of us.
And were you then subdivided into groups?
Yes, we were divided into cohorts.
How many people were in each cohort?
About 8 to 10.
How many people were in your cohort?
It was about 8 of us.
Who was the supervising pastor for your cohort?
Brodus was our leader.
So in her group, her cohort, that's a proper term, Pastor Brodus Perry has popped up again and was the leader or at the helm of her particular group or cohort.
Would you consider y'all's group to have been a close group?
We were very close.
Did you become close with Pastor Perry through that group?
I did.
Is that why you reached out to him for spiritual counseling?
Yes, I trusted him.
Now I want to talk to you about that counseling. Okay?
So this is where their friendship began before it evolved, cultivated, the seeds were watered into something else.
When you approached Brodus Perry about counseling, did you explain why you wanted counseling?
I did.
What did you tell him?
I told him that my husband and I were having some marital issues, and I just needed to figure out spiritually which direction I just needed some spiritual guidance on direction.
Did Pastor Perry agree to meet with you?
He did.
Where did y'all meet?
We met in my office.
Why?
Okay, so this is setting the tone. This is setting the backdrop of this relationship. Okay, earmark this. They decided to meet in her office And she goes on to explain that she felt comfortable there. Let's continue to listen to the testimony of Latoshia Daniels in the case of the love triangle that ended tragically with Pastor Brodus Perry. This is Latoshia Daniels speaking, and this is courtesy of Court TV. Again, thank you to those that have tuned in. And if you're new to this channel, please consider giving this a thumbs up and a subscribe.
I didn't feel comfortable with being in the church, and I wanted to be in a safe space because this was, again, something that I was not fully embracing, that I had to deal with, and I wanted to be in a space where I knew that I can be able to be vulnerable.
So she was looking for a space where she knew she could be vulnerable, and I'm going to assume she meant be herself without any judgment nor with any restrictions. Again, this is the testimony of Latoshia Daniels, who stood trial in the unaliving of Pastor Brodus Perry in 2019. Let's continue. Courtesy Court TV. Fair use.
First counseling session, what did you discuss?
Everything that was going on within my marriage.
How long was the first counseling session?
It was about 2 hours.
Were you emotional during that process?
Yes,
Were you open?
I was.
Did you tell him very personal, private things?
I did.
How long, well, at the end of that session, did you determine at that time that you were going to ask for a second session?
Yes.
How long until you had a second session?
It was approximately 2 to 3 weeks before that.
So the initial session lasted, according to Latoshia Daniels, 2 hours, and approximately 2 to 3 weeks passed before the second session. Let us continue with the testimony of Latoshia Daniels. Again, this is testimony of Latoshia Daniels. We took the life of Pastor Brodus Perry and injured his wife, widow Tabitha, courtesy of Court TV.
Did it feel good to get all of that off of your chest?
Yes.
Did you reach out to Brodus Perry for a second counseling session?
I did.
Did he say that he would come do a second counseling session?
He did.
When you had your second counseling session, did you ask him about any odd behavior from the first session?
I did.
What was that?
In the first session, from the moment he walked through the door, he had his hands in his coat pocket, his jacket pocket.
So she's describing with her body language how he entered the session and gestured how his hands were in his coat pocket. So again, listen to the testimony, because again, that this is the backdrop of how this relationship, alleged relationship, began. Again, this is Latoshia Daniels, courtesy of Court TV.
And he sat there the entire time during the session with his hands in his pocket. So I found that to be a little strange, but I didn't say anything in the first session. So I asked him during the second session, because he came in and he didn't have his hands in his pocket. And I was like, what was that with you having your hands in your pockets? And at that time, he told me it was because he was trying to maintain his professionalism.
Okay. To me, and this is just to me, ladies and gentlemen, to maintain or trying to maintain his professionalism, that would have been a red flag to me. I don't know about you, but to me, that would have been a red flag. So again, let's run that back just a little bit more.
Odd behavior from the first session.
I did.
What was that?
In the first session, from the moment he walked through the door, he had his hands in his coat pocket, his jacket pocket, and he sat there the entire time during the session with his hands in his pocket. So I found that to be a little strange, but I didn't say anything in the first session. So I asked him during the section session because he came in and he did have his hands in his pocket, and I was like, "What was that with you having your hands in your pocket?" And at that time, he told me it was because he was trying to maintain his professionalism.
What you talking about, Willis?
That he might be interested in you?
That was the first time.
Did you proceed to start?
So she had an idea that he may have been interested in her. I told you this has a lot of twists and turns. Again, the testimony of Latoshia Daniels, courtesy of Court TV.
With the second counseling session? What happened after you started the counseling session?
As I was talking and sharing, Brodus reached over and grabbed. I had a two-arm chair, and he pulled me toward him and began to passionately kiss me. And from there, in that session, we did have sex for the first time.
Were you proud of that encounter?
So, after the first initial counseling session, which lasted, according to Latoshia Daniels' testimony, 2 hours, then a period of 2 to 3 weeks passed by. They had a session number 2 where, according to her testimony, he pulled her close to her while she was in the chair, passionately kissed her, and from there they engaged in an act, keeping in mind Pastor Brodus was a married man and she was still married. Let us continue.
In hindsight, no, but at that time, he was giving me everything that I had been missing for a long time.
Okay. I want everyone to pay attention to this part of the testimony because this again sets the stage for where the manipulation has come in, allegedly, and his crossing the line, both crossing the line, has come in. Again, this is the testimony of Latoshia Daniels in the case of Tennessee versus Latoshia Daniels and the unaliving of Pastor Brodus Perry that occurred in 2019. This trial was this year, November this year.
Did you know that he was married?
I did.
You know his wife?
I had, at that time, I had seen her in church, but didn't know of her.
You got to know her better later?
Yes.
How did you feel about the fact that Brodus was married?
At that time, honestly, I did not think about it. I knew that we both were married, and I was engaged in what he was giving me.
Had you had any attention like that in a long time?
No, I hadn't. In years.
Emotional attention?
Not in years.
Physical attention?
Not like that. No.
After your counseling sessions, did you end up getting divorced?
That was in February, and I did end up getting divorced in December of that year.
That's when it was finalized.
So she being Latoshia Daniels, ended up divorcing. So that was her second marriage. However, Pastor Brodus Perry remained with his wife Tabitha. Let's continue.
Yes.
And did Pastor Perry encourage you to get divorced?
We talked about it, and there were times whenever we would be on trips, he would make mention of, oh, we can't do that until you get a divorce, so we can't do this until.
So they were taking trips together, again, as this testimony goes. And I'm going to end this shortly. You will hear some of the things that they were actually involved in. So again, it's possible his wife didn't know that there was a extramarital affair going on, but to me, it's difficult to believe. Let's continue. Again, this is Latoshia Daniels, and this is her testimony, courtesy of Court TV.
You get a divorce.
Now, I want to talk to you about your relationship with Brodus Perry, okay? After y'all had sex, did Brodus give you any particular instructions?
Yes. He immediately told me to download a app for us to be able to communicate. That app was called Confide.
Tell the jury what the Confide app did.
The Confide.
Now remember, I told you at the top of the broadcast to remember the word confide. Ladies and gentlemen, please be careful when you are using certain apps to communicate with people, because that, again, you had to know that was wrong. You were hiding what you were doing, and that was wrong on both of you. I didn't even know there was an app called Confide. So we're going to listen to a little bit more of this and close this out. But please stay tuned. Stay tuned. Part 2. This story it's very, very interesting, and it goes to show not everyone behind the pulpit, not everyone with the Bible is truly a man or woman of God. Let us continue.
App is whenever you would send a message, and when you read that message.
So, anytime you would send a message and that message was read, it would disappear. I'm not Einstein, but I would venture to believe, I would go out on a limb to believe this is something that he has done before. So we are going to stop right here. Again, this is the case, Tennessee versus Latoshia Daniels, where she was found guilty of M2. They wanted M1, but she was actually convicted of M2. And I will show that momentarily. So a jury found Latoshia Daniels guilty of second-degree M for the unaliving of Pastor Brodus Perry, and guilty of attempted reckless endangerment for injuring his wife. He was only 36 years old. 36 years old. Thank you for tuning in to part 1 of Love Triangle Ends Tragically. Pastor Perry. And that's Latoshia Daniels. Again, please make sure that you hit the thumbs up if you would be so kind, and any comments you may have on this case and other cases involving pastors, preachers, bishops, apostles. Again, double tap, or if you're looking at this from a computer or another device, please give it a thumbs up. Until next video, please be safe, be well, and you know the rest. Be healthier. Until next time, bye-bye for now.